Good evening, IL family. Happy Monday. It's Coach Timiel / Lady Timiel here, and this is Inclination Life, where we talk about positive living via simple truths. So on tonight, we're going to have our topic is going to be moments, and so this conversation tonight comes really from the start of my Monday and how my Monday started off. So when I got up today, you know how you have those days. I don't like to say you got up on the wrong side of the bed, but I like to say that you kind of got up and you felt like there was a difference in your day. You felt like this day was not starting off at the pace that you wanted, maybe in the headspace. You know, there was something in the atmosphere that was just a little bit different. And I'm talking about my atmosphere, not necessarily what was going on in the entire world, but in my atmosphere that was different. And it let me know that maybe didn't necessarily start the course of my day off like I had planned to. And so as I was going on about the day, or as I was getting prepared to leave, I realized that I was maybe not necessarily in the headspace that I like to be in as I start my day. And so usually there's a little banter that goes on internally in my head where I go through this conversation and I, maybe back and forth with myself, and I'm starting to go over things that don't even matter. But today I decided to do something different. Today I decided to just begin to pray, just begin to acknowledge God, just begin to tell God, that, I needed his strength on today. And after I went through prayer, I began to sing. And there's a song, and it says an anointing fall on me. I don't know where that song, it came out of the atmosphere, but as I was doing my own little version of that, I was saying, God, without your anointing, even through this day, there's nothing that's going to take place. And I started to feel a shifting even in my space at that moment. And so it made me think about this topic for tonight. When I think about moments, because a lot of times you heard people say, well, you're just having a moment, or you may have even said it over your own self that maybe I'm just having a moment. Or when we think about moments, we think about experiences, we think about things that happen in life. And I think about a lot of times the moments in my life. You can think about some in your life where it was a moment that defined things in your life. It was a moment that changed the course of your life. It was a moment that seemed to have the greatest impact. And it made me think about the fact of, do moments really have to do they really have to direct the course of our entire life? Do they have to really be the end of our story? Do they have to be the thing that we take along with us all along the way, and we let those things define us? And my answer kind of came out to be yes and no as I analyzed that on tonight, because I realized that there are some moments in our life that are very pivotal. There's some moments in our life that are very serious. There's some moments in our life where we've been through a trauma, or we've been through a situation, and it was a turning point in our life. And so I cannot minimize the significance of that on tonight. But what I do want to say is that in really thinking about this, I thought about how many moments that don't have that weight, yet we allow them to we allow them to be in our life. We allow them to be such defining moments. So something as simple as us getting up and not maybe being in the best moment, maybe even having a discussion with someone, maybe even having a brief interaction with someone. We sometimes let those moments define our entire day. We let them define our weeks and our months, and we can go on and on. But moments, we let moments really take place in our life. And so when I thought about that on tonight, one of the questions I put here was, does it have to? And then I looked up the definition of really what a moment was, and it says and it has very in there, a very brief period of time. And so we allow very brief periods of time to define our lives, to impact our lives, to dictate our lives, to define who we are, to define our purpose. And I know that we've all had moments, good and bad. Most of the time, we don't let the good ones weigh in as much. But if something severe has happened in our life, we let those things linger with us. We let those things go with us. And so I want to encourage us tonight in this area, because I believe there's so much that we're missing because we are taking moments and we're not necessarily putting them in their proper place. And so I put here, the impact of one moment has changed the course of a person's life, good or bad. There are pivotal moments and there are significant ones. Our job on tonight is to decipher between what is significant, in the sense that we're making a momentous decision in our lives, or we're having that experience. We're at a place in our lives where if we choose to go left or right, it's going to change the course of some things. our job is to decipher between that versus the moments that we're having that we're allowing to define us. And I'll use, for example, even as I was thinking about this topic on tonight, relationships that could be marital, that could be familial, that could be between church members at your job or whatever. We oftentimes will let one conversation or one situation disrupt an entire relationship. We'll let it disrupt an entire friendship. We'll let it break down families. We'll let it break down work relationships. Why do we do this? Because we are allowing a moment to be so pivotal that we forget all the other moments that have taken place in our relationships, in our situations, in our interactions with people. It's like if you go to a restaurant and you sit down and you have excellent service and there's just one thing that goes wrong. And most of us, our instinct is to say that, the whole meal was terrible. The whole scenario was terrible, that nothing went right. Instead of us actually, dissecting that thing and putting it in its place and saying, no, maybe the vegetable was cold or maybe the meat wasn't done right, but it didn't undo the whole situation because maybe the conversation with the people that I was there with was awesome. Maybe my server was great. Maybe the atmosphere, maybe I met a perfect stranger in the restaurant and we had a dialogue together, but we have a tendency to take one thing, one situation, and we'll undo a whole scenario. So even in using my day, for example, we'll get up and because we had a moment in our morning that wasn't right, we'll say our entire day was bad instead of really segregating that and saying, okay, the morning didn't start off well, but the rest of the day, it went absolutely great. And you're going to see the significance of that. And so sometimes we let moments weigh in too much on our choices, is what I put here. And I really believe that wholeheartedly, that we let moments define us. We let moments dictate. We can let a moment uproot and tear up things that have been founded for years. And this is so important in the relationships because we let moments, we let a conversation, we let a disagreement, we let different opinions tear up whole scenarios. And we have to be mindful to decipher what is pivotal, what is necessary. Let me look at this whole thing and not pull out the one thing. Let me not act like I'm in the restaurant and pull out the one thing that's wrong and say the whole entire experience was messed up, but yet let me put it in its actual place. And so we don't realize sometimes that it's our emotions and feelings that are weighing in on the choice. And so what's psychologically happening is that we go from all these good and great emotions to this one instance where something is maybe not quite the way we want it. We're to this one instance where something doesn't quite go the way that we desired, or the conversation maybe turns to left. And we decide that because the conversation went left or the situation didn't happen the way we wanted or the experience wasn't great, we decide that all of it is no good. And so I did some little research because I knew there had to be some psychological support behind this. And so I was reading an article from a website called booksummaries.com where this gentleman reviews all different kind of books, but he was reviewing a book about basically the psychology of how we handle our moments. And in it, psychologists were saying that the way that we weigh our experiences is that we look at what the best or the worst moment of it is, and that's called the peak. So we pull out whatever the best or the worst moment of that experience is, and we also look at the ending, and that's how we define our experiences. And it was so important because they parallel that to your restaurant experience. They parallel to that to if you were providing customer service, you would want to make sure that the peak of their experience was good and the end and the close was very good, because that's what they would remember in their mindset. They really wouldn't take in place. And so even though you may sit down and you may have been at a 2-hour meal, you would take 5 or 10 minutes of that 2-hour meal and define that whole meal by that 5 or 10 minutes. Now, we also do that in all areas of our life. We take something that is a whole duration and we can take a segment out of it, which is called our peak. And we take that one little thing thing and we define our entire situations, entire relationships, entire interactions on one thing. And so we've got to be aware of this, because the thing about it is we have the power in our mindset to be able to change what we see as the outcome. We have the power to actually step back and say, you know what? It's not all bad. This is where that positive mindset comes in at, because the thing about it is when we realize that that was just a moment and like 90% of it or 95% of it was great, very rarely are you in a situation where it is like none of it has any good in it. None of it has anything great in it. And so when we begin to be able to think like that, when we begin able to be able to see life like that, we handle situations differently. We handle moments differently. We handle interactions differently. And we say, okay, you know, that was just a moment. It didn't clearly define it. Have you ever been in a store that you absolutely love and then you got up to the cashier and maybe the cashier wasn't great at customer service, and you defined that entire store by that one cashier, even though it was a multitude of employees, even though, you know, maybe if you went back to that cashier on another day, they may have done a better job, but you define that by that. I know that used to be me. I used to be in the situations where I would go into an establishment and one person could have caused a bad experience, but versus going back, giving that establishment another opportunity, I would just say, I'm not going there. You know, the service is all bad. And I'm defining this by one moment in life. So can you see how we oftentimes take one thing in our life and we look at our lives? Do you see how you can get the doom and gloom attitude even about your life when you look at it in that perspective, when you're only picking apart the moments in life that are not really great, and you're not looking at all the in-between moments. You're not looking at all the duration of time where life is really going good, where life is really going great, where life is just peaceful, where life is what it is. And it doesn't mean I'm not minimizing trials and tests and struggles on tonight, but what I'm telling you is oftentimes we elevate moments, and we don't elevate the good moments on most days. We elevate those moments that are insignificant. We elevate those moments that are really, they're not good moments, but yet we don't look at all the positive around it. And so I want to encourage us on tonight, a very brief message, that it's just a moment. It is just a moment. It's just a very brief time in your life, maybe a very brief moment in your day, maybe a very brief moment in your month that did not go well, or the interaction wasn't well. But don't allow that to define you. Look at all the moments around it that you're paying no attention to. Realize that in a psychological standpoint, your mind actually picks out points and peaks, and it looks at certain things. And so you got to train your mind to look differently. You got to be purposeful in that I'm going to look at the whole picture, and I'm not going to pull out one thing and dissect it. I believe if we learn to do that we're going to look at life a lot differently. We're going to see the jewels that we have in life that we oftentimes overlook, because we oftentimes let moments define us, and moments should not define us because they're very brief periods. And sometimes moments are horrific. We've experienced things in moments that are very horrific, but think about all the other moments that you've had around it, or the moments that you've had since that point in time in life, and see, can it change your attitude about life? See, can it change your definition, your structure, or how you see yourself on tonight? So I pray that this has been encouraging to you. I know it was encouraging to me on this morning, even as I thought about the fact that it's just a moment and you can shift from it, and that your entire day can change if you don't stay stuck in a moment. So I hope you'll come back in next week with me as we have another conversation about positive living via simple truths. Have a good night. Thanks for tuning in.